So what happened? Tell us your epiphany.
Yeah, and I told the story only to my wife and to my children before this book came out. And since then, I've told it several times. And the more I tell it, the more I realize how inadequate language is to describe these kind of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I tell it, the better I get at it. so here I am, Jeff, 15 years ago in my mid-30s, this pretty dogmatic atheist who thinks, boy, anybody who believes in God and follows religion does it because it's a crutch. Why else would they do it? Because it's patently absurd, right? That science teaches us that these anthropomorphic, mythical, archaic images are simply wrong. And I had no clue that there was any other way to look at it, right? And I found myself, and I had been divorced relatively recently, and things were difficult, and I had found myself wanting to go to synagogue after having not been there for 20 years or so. And I went to one that was nearby me, and I came and I sat in the back of the synagogue, feeling self-conscious and wondering why I was there and judging everybody who came in, and telling myself why I'm better than they are, and smarter and more informed. But suddenly they just started to sing, and it's called a nigun, a little wordless melody, and I started to listen to it, and I really found it very beautiful and very compelling and very ancient in a way that not ancient as in old, but ancient as in archetypal. And it spoke to something in me, and I thought, well, this is very nice. And more of the service went on, and more singing happened, and I found myself somehow relaxing into it. And as I did that, I remember that the light in the place started to change in a way that I had never experienced before. The light started to become very silvery, and I began, and again, this is mystical language, so bear with me, but I began to see the light as an object. Mm-hmm. And it started, and I thought, who's turning the lights up? And it started to get brighter and sparkle in this very shimmery way. And I was experiencing that, and as it was shimmering in this way, I started to relax more. And suddenly, I looked out at the people around me, and I experienced them in a way that I had never experienced people before. I experienced them in a very direct connection, free of the ego shield that I had built around myself. It seemed to just dissolve at that moment. Of course, it flooded back. I wish it was gone, but later it came back. So don't think otherwise. But in that moment, I was them, they were me, and I was filled with a compassion and a love for them that I had never known. And I saw the people around me with an intense clarity, as though they were under a microscope. I could see every little hair on them, and I was filled with a desire to be with them and to know them, and for them to know me. And at that moment, the light grew stronger. It seemed to surround me, and I literally felt an embrace around me, and I started to cry, sitting in the back of this synagogue, at the beauty of it. And I closed my eyes, and I could still see the light with my eyes closed. And I suddenly received a message, not a verbal message, but I received a message that said, "I love you," with a love, an unconditional, endless, infinite love that I didn't know of such things, and of a voice that was so, and a perception that was so pure and clear that I knew it wasn't me. We all have millions of voices bopping around in our head.
Oh, right.
And we learn to listen to them. Oh, that's the voice of desire. That's the voice of ambition. That's the voice of envy. This was nothing like that. This was a pure voice that was not mine. And I thought, you love me? I didn't feel lovable in that way. And yes. And then I heard another but. I heard a little but. I heard, but you need to grow. You need to change. You can't keep on living the way you've been living. And in that moment, as I was crying in the back, and I did nothing but was looking at me, I said, I promise. I said, I promise I will. And slowly the light lifted and things returned back to normal for me. But that moment of promise and connection, changed my life forever. And it changed it in every way I can imagine. My career suddenly started doing better. My relationship with my children was better. I finally met my soulmate and the woman who I know, I need to be with. And of course, I've spent the last 15 years trying to honoring that promise in a way that's transformational, not just for me, but for other people, if I can do that.
It's incredible. It's a lovely story.
Yeah, thank you.
So it kind of even leads into my next question, which takes it one step further in description, and that is, how would you describe the divine as represented in every human?
Wow, what a great question. The face of the divine. I mean, that's how we experience the face of the divine, I think, in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, the most obvious way is in other people. I mean, we're just physicality. I mean, what animates us, what gives us our consciousness, what gives us the ability to be self-aware, is that spark of the divine that's embedded within us.
Mm-hmm.
In that way, we're a fractal. The Bible says that we're in the image of God, but that's not really what it says. In Hebrew, it says "b'tselem," which could mean a shadow of God. Mm-hmm. And this is an image that I love, that just as if you stand up something and it casts a shadow on the table, that shadow is cast by that thing and is inseparable from it, but it is a dimension less than the thing itself.
Mm-hmm.
In that way, we're shadows of the divine. We share in it. If you get rid of the book, the thing, the shadow disappears. So we are, at our very essence, connected to the source of consciousness, which is God, the flow of consciousness that animates us, because otherwise we're simply just mute physicality. And that exists for everybody. That exists for everyone. And when you connect to somebody with that awareness and that recognition, it takes tremendous courage and it takes tremendous awareness, because you have to expose yourself and your tenderness and your vulnerability, and most of us don't care to do that because we think we'll be hurt or we'll be rejected. If you can expose yourself to another human being in that way, and you can see them in that way, the spark of the divine is flowing between you.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Buber, who wrote this famous book, Ich und Du, which is I and Thou, made this wonderful paradoxical statement. He said that I can only know myself through you, and in knowing myself, I then know you.
Mm.
That we can't know ourselves unless we're in relationship with another person, and that relationship is what makes the divine float to the surface. And we tend to think, and I think New Age spirituality, if I can say this in a way that doesn't sound critical, New Age spirituality spends a lot of time focusing on the I relationship. How do I experience myself? And if I can go deep enough within myself, I can access the well of being that is the infinite. And
mm-hmm.
that happens to be true. I mean, if you go deep enough in yourself, Ken Wilber says you stumble into infinity. And you can do that, and it is a stumbling. It just happens. And that's wonderful. But it's isolated. It's a monologue, and that's only part of the kind of relationships that you have. You also have an I-you relationship, which is a relationship with another person, and in that connection, Martin Buber says, and I believe, is really where the divine can be found. In terms of how it manifests physically, you can go into yourself and get to the ground of being, but you can't get to any kind of sense of becoming or evolving or growth in yourself. You can only get that in relationship, a physical relationship with another human being.
Mm-hmm.